I'm trying to look at the possibilities of dialogue between Dalits and the Muslims for a new politics in India, given the fact that the Muslims and Dalits are the marginalized and the category who have been the victims of the system as such. In fact, I got 4 important propositions. I tried to develop my 4 important propositions with regard to the parliamentary democracy. Since this session is also with regard to public policy, I thought I should add this as a part of my proposition. The first proposition is that the parliamentary democracy in Indian context, despite many public policies, you might be knowing about the kind of public policies that have been introduced after the independence, post-independence, beginning with affirmative action, land reforms, or even the NERM program, Mahatma Gandhi rural employment policies and other kinds of policies. I would say that these policies have failed to address the basic issues of the Dalits and the Muslims. So I'll elaborate that one later on, how these policies have been defeated actually. For example, like the policies such as the land reforms. Even though land reforms, if I look at the studies done by Professor Torad, probably land reforms have created more number of owner cultivator, but actually they are not created what is called the economic categories. It has brought something called the social identities to the Dalits, but they have become economically very strong categories. That's why they have remained poor. If you look at the number of Dalits in Indian context, they have remained poor. And if you look at the history of land reforms in India, it was not brought in one go. It was brought in at different phases, right from 1960s, then 70s, 80s. Now again we have one more land reforms which have been brought in as a part of the Land Reforms Amendment Act, which is trying to accommodate the interest of the global capital. In fact, Indian state, which is resorting to the capitalist development, has not been able to address the basic issues of the Dalits. For the Dalits, land is the major issue of the identity in the grassroots level, particularly rural side. But this is not the case of the Muslims. Muslims are largely an autonomous category when compared to the Dalits. Dalits are still reeling under the feudal lords. They remain non-autonomous categories. And most of the places, given the fact that they have got the small land holdings, they are not being able to get into the market. In fact, if you look at the exclusion of the Dalits, studies conducted in Indian context, which has largely said that Dalits have been denied the access to the market, rural market, because of the fact that they are not being a very strong category as such. They are not a powerful category. Despite the fact that you have a parliamentary democracy, which has introduced these land reforms at different phases, beginning with the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and of late you have the Amendment Act, but they are not being a powerful category. So what happened is that they are not being able to access to the market. Even the market, even the labor market also, they are not being able to access. That's a major problem. That's the reason why Dalits have been excluded. They have remained as a very, very weak category. That's the reason why I'm saying that one proposition that despite these what's called the public policies, the Dalits are not being able to become a very strong categories in Indian context. At the same time, this has not reached even to the Muslims. If you look at the reports after reports, for example, like the reports made by, developed and submitted by such a committee report, or the Ranganath Mishra committee report. These 2 committee reports definitely talk about the kinds of exclusion that the Muslims are facing in Indian context. For example, even though they are as I said earlier, they are the autonomous categories, they can move from one place to the another places, they can enter into the market, small market to the larger market, but the problem is that they have remained as a marginalized categories. If you look at the statistics given by the Sacha committee report, that the Muslims have remained backward. Like for example, one instance is about why the banks are not entering the Muslim area is the fact that they treat the Muslim area as the red zone areas, which is again and again stressed by the what's called the Sachar Committee report. That's the reason why Muslims, even after the independence, even after the multiple public policies in favor of the Muslims and also Dalits, they have remained marginalized category. I would say that the parliamentary democracy has not addressed the basic issues of education, access to the market, labor, or the mainstream society space wherein they are being denied, they are being discriminated. The mainstream spaces in a society space is not being given to these two categories. For example, the recent incident in Bombay, wherein one Muslim lady was denied apartment in a locality. These kind of instances are much more everywhere. Even they are being discriminated even in rented houses, in the public spaces, hospitals, everywhere. That's the reason why these discriminations are very, very much large, and that's the reason why this public policy have not addressed these issues of the Dalits and the minorities. The second important thing is that parliamentary democracy has tried to look at these two categories as the homogeneous categories. I would say that this parliamentary democracy in that way failed to understand the existence of different categories within this lot. For example, parliamentary democracy has not been able to recognize the category called the Dalit Muslims, within the Muslim category. Even though they are existing, as one of the sociologists like Professor Arjuna Padre argues, that they are existed but not enlisted categories. These Dalit Muslims, there are three kinds of Muslims in Indian context. One is the Astrafs, the Astrafs belong to the upper caste. The second is the Urjals and the Urjals. Urjals belong to the OBC categories, which are basically larger category. And you have these Dalit Muslims as much more bigger category. But the thing is that they are not being recognized in terms of the public policy. Like, for example, in terms of the affirmative actions and other things. See, there's a whole debate taking place with regard to these categories, whether since they belong to the religious category, they cannot be given the affirmative action, the benefit of the affirmative action. That's the reason why these categories are marginalized again and again. And at the same time, state tries to look at the Muslims as a homogeneous category. Even though I would say that, and the Dalits as a homogeneous category, but I would say that among the Dalits there are many, many categories. I think there are nearly 40 to 50 categories. And among the Muslims there are many categories. Probably these categories require something called the recognition from the political system, particularly parliamentary democracy. And that's the reason why parliamentary democracy needs to rework its politics. Even if you look at it's not only that one, but also in terms of giving the representation. Look at, for example, look at the Dalit representation. Dalit representation largely comes from the reservation category, reserved category, rather than the general category. Probably, and at the same time, if you look at the percentage of the Muslim representing, or getting into the political system has dwindled. In the last election, it has come down to 24. Now, the whole question is that political system is not, giving the adequate representation. It's not only at the parliamentary level, but also at the grassroots level. Parliamentary democracy nowhere works only with the parliament, but also at the grassroots level. Even at the panchayat level. But this representation has not been given. They have not been given adequate representation. That's why I'm saying that these categories, different categories within the Muslims or the Dalits, they need to be recognized. They need to be, but also be given the adequate representation. But the parliamentary democracy is not giving. At the same time, I would say that in this particular context, the parliamentary democracy's politics is half-done politics, half-done transformative politics. I call this as a half-done transformative politics. If it has done, with all consciousness, probably there would have been, the less number of, caste oppression on the Dalits, and they would have been given access to the market, labor, land, and other things. There would have been very less number of communal riots in Indian context. There would have been more representation of the Muslims in the parliament and other places. See, in this particular context, I would say that is there a possibility of bringing these two categories for a larger dialogue in Indian context, given the fact that both these two categories are become victims of the parliamentary democracy, often in transformative politics. In that particular context, is it possible to bring that? One is that the basic differences between the Dalits and the Muslims require to be sorted out. For example, in the event of a communal riot, for example, Dalits are not responding. Nor when there is a communal caste riot, Muslims are not responding. Is it because the sphere of activity of the Dalits and the Muslims are different? Like as I said earlier, for the Dalits, land is the major contradiction. Land constitute a primary conflictual category as such, or the landlords constitute the primary conflictual category, and that's the reason why the Dalits are found more in the villages than in the urban area, except in the urban slum areas. Muslims are largely found in the urban areas. They are in the urban slum areas as well as in the urban some pockets wherein you have this ghettoization taking place. In fact, the ghettos are the common place wherein the Muslims and the Dalits, they live together. In that particular context, probably we need to come out with the commonality of the differences. We need to find out what are the problematic, what are the contradictions, who constitute the primary contradictions in the present context. Is it the landlord? Is it the market? It is the capitalist development? It is the global capital? Layers of contradictions, we need to sort it out. Which constitute the primary contradictions? Which constitute the secondary contradictions? And once we resort to this kind of contradiction, probably we can have a dialogue, not only dialogue, but also can form or to bring or to create what is called the new politics in India. To bring a paradigm shift, I think the Dalits, who are the victims, and the Muslims, who are also equally the victims of the system, political systems, they need to come together and to bring what is called a paradigm shift in the parliamentary democracy. Thank you very much.